One of my compasses in life is whatever scares you, go do it. I've only ever been just a musician, that's all I know. What would life be if I stopped making music? Whoa, that's terrifying. So let's do it. That's a real core value of mine, of wanting to live the fullest life I can before I die.
Hey guys, welcome back. Today's guest is the great Derek Sivers. You know that beer commercial with the most interesting man in the world? Derek is the real-life version of that. He's been a professional musician, a circus performer. He started a music distribution company and sold it for tens of millions of dollars, then turned around and gave most of it to charity and became a TED speaker, as well as the author of a few fantastically insightful little books. Derek is one of the most original thinkers I've ever spoken to. We covered everything from how to live by your own rules, how to stop letting limiting beliefs hold you back, how to do things that scare you, and much, much more. So without further ado, I give you Derek Sivers. So Derek, I first became aware of you through one of Mark Manson's articles, and it really doesn't surprise me that you guys are friends because of all the public intellectuals that I've seen, I've never seen someone quite give less of a fuck than you. And for anyone who's read Subtle Art, they'll know that this is one of the best compliments that I can give, in the sense that you live such an unconventional life, but it's not different for the sake of different. You seem to me to have such clarity on what your values are, what you want out of life. And you seem to have this ability to just say, fuck conventions, fuck societal pressure. You just live by your own rules. So how do you think the rest of us can live with a bit more clarity, a bit more alignment, and a bit more intention?
Ooh, it's a big recipe. It helped that at the age of 14, I decided I wanted to be a successful musician. And I was living in suburban Chicago, surrounded by kids that were prepping themselves to go to Ivy League colleges. And I just felt none of this applies to me. For what I want, everything you're doing is a recipe for a different kind of life than I want. For what I want, I don't want to go to college. To be a successful musician, a university would be a distraction, not a help. For what I want, I will never have a job. I will be completely self-employed. I will be a freelance musician. I'll never have security. I'll never have insurance. For what I want, I don't need to learn world history. I don't need to learn calculus. I know what I want. I can understand how world history and calculus would be important if you want to spread out your options. But I already knew exactly what I wanted, and I was fiercely determined to get it. And that was such good luck for me that happened, because, for one, it makes you resourceful, because when you know what you want, you look at the whole world through that filter. Like, how can this help me? How can this help me? That's what drew me to self-help books. When I heard about Tony Robbins, when at the age of 19, somebody told me about Tony Robbins, I went, oh, that could help me. Tools for being more effective, tools for being more productive, tools for communicating better, tools for thinking bigger. That can help me. Books on marketing, even though they were written in a corporate style as if you're promoting your cough medicine, I thought, wait, that can help me with my music. That can help me find a niche for my music in the crowded marketplace. And it also helps you filter requests from friends wanting to sit around and get high on the couch watching TV. And suddenly that is not a pleasurable activity. That's the enemy. That is the enemy of my success. If I say yes to sitting on the couch watching TV, that will prevent me from getting everything I want in life. So I'm so thankful that little 14-year-old Derek had this intense passion to be a musician, because it changed everything. And then to answer your question more directly, it helped me see the world around me through the lens of Your rules are a recipe for a life I don't want.
14 years old, you already felt that way.
It started at 14 with just hearing heavy metal guitar. I was like, oh, I want that. And, after picking up a guitar and practicing my scales and reading every issue of Guitar Player magazine and learning all the guitar solos and everything, somewhere in there, age 14, 15, 16, I knew I want this so badly. This is all I want. I'm focused.
First, this reminds me a lot of what Stephen Pressfield talked about in his book, Going Pro, where he said, once you go pro, once you have that pro's mindset where you have your one goal and your goal being music, all the distractions kind of just fade away. So you never felt peer pressured at all from parents or your peers where, hey, let's go hang out, you should go to university, none of that?
They would ask, but I was driven. It's like an Olympic athlete being asked by his buddies to eat a giant pot of lasagna or do heroin or something, It's like, what? No, never. Never in a million years would I do that. That's the opposite of what I want out of life. So yes, of course, friends would ask me to sit around and do nothing with them. But in college, my nickname was the Robot because I got into Berklee College of Music. Like, oh my God, this is the place where it all happens. This is where dreams are made. This is where raw talent turns into bright talent. And I was there in Berklee College of Music, and my classmates would sit around in the cafeteria for 2 hours, just shooting the shit and eating their food for 2 hours. I would walk in, slap some peanut butter on some bread, and go right back to the practice room. And they're like, dude, come on, relax, hang out, man. Chill a bit. I'm like, no, I gotta practice.
I see a lot of content nowadays about morning routines and optimizing productivity and all these things. And your buddy Mark Manson just kind of cut through all the noise and said the best morning routine is having work that you're excited to do. I'm working on a video essay right now about how to find your purpose. And it's one of those things where seemingly for some people, like the Kobe Bryants, the Elon Musks, and yourself, there was just from a young age, you just knew, at least for a certain period of your life. Because I know you've reinvented a few times and had a few interesting careers. And then there are some of us who we never felt that itch, and the sort of follow your passion advice kind of falls on deaf ears. And in fact, it actually shames a lot of people because some people never felt that way about a certain thing. I want to make a little room for the folks who haven't found their thing yet, because I think this is important to touch on, where I think it's possible if you invest in something and you go all in and you get to a certain level of competence, that even if you didn't feel that spark about that thing the way that Derek has or Kobe did, that you can get to a point where you're that excited about something.
So Cal Newport wrote a brilliant book called So Good They Can't Ignore You, where he points out that passion is a feeling that comes later after you get good at something and the world starts rewarding you for it. Then you feel this feeling that we call passion. But at first, it can just be accident. Like you might just stumble into getting a job at a newspaper that requires that you write a column every week. And you do it just for the money at first, but then it becomes a passion for writing. He points out Steve Jobs as saying his passion was yoga. He was not so into computers. He was into yoga and spirituality. But then his friend Steve Wozniak said, hey, I've got this opportunity. This computer store wants to order 1,000 computers if we can build them. I think I can build them, but can you go sell them? And he went, yeah, okay. It was not a passion. Later, he got passionate about computers and design and all these other things. But that was after the world started rewarding him for this thing that he got good at. So Cal Newport in So Good They Can't Ignore You points out the importance of just focusing on your craft, just picking something, anything, and doing it and getting good at it, even if it's not a passion. And this feeling of passion comes later when you get deeper into the good stuff and you start getting the joy of your abilities increasing, and you start getting the joy of people thinking higher of you because they see you having this exceptional skill that's really just the result of you spending some time on the craft. So I think it really starts with the craft. It does not start with the passion.
We definitely have it backwards. Nowadays, we tell young people to go chase their passions, and what happens is they start a career, and then when they don't feel passionate right away, they quit. But how are you supposed to get good at anything if you don't stick with it? And I think it was in Subtle Art when Mark talked about how you shouldn't look for the reward you want, but you should look for the pain you want. And I thought that was such an important little detail to point out, where it's not gonna be sunshine and rainbows when you find that thing right away, not like a love at first sight. But I think for Mark, he also went to music school, and right away, just being in the practice room by himself just drove him nuts. And there was no screaming girls, no backstage parties. So he just quit. And when he started writing for him wasn't like fireworks and amazing, but it wasn't that bad. So he was able to put in the thousands of hours to get good at the thing, and like you said, reap the rewards. So if anything, it's what is the day-to-day that I can put up with so that I can get enough hours in to get good at the thing?
It could be anything. This benefit that I got from going deep into music from the age of 14 to 29. For me, it was music, but it really could have been anything. It could have been sewing. It could have been dancing. It could have been marine biology. It's the idea of having one thing that you're focused on that you become really good at. Getting great at one thing teaches you how to be great at anything. It teaches you how to learn. It teaches you how to improve. It teaches you how to master. It's the mastery path. It's being on the path that matters.
I forgot where I read this idea about how essentially it could be a steel worker, it could be a line cook just flipping burgers and onions. When you are completely focused and you reach a certain level of competence and you have a certain level of dedication and mastery, in a very spiritual way, it's a way of finding God in whatever craft you do. So it could be the master samurai where the two swords clash and you have that moment where time slows down. It could be that line cook that has 4 different stacks of onions stacked up and the different burgers. We can learn about life through so many different paths. Let's go back a little bit to your clarity and your alignment on how you want to live your life.
Former clarity, former alignment. I don't want to give the impression that I am as focused as I was from age 14 to 29. I think that was a single-minded goal I was on for 15 years to become a successful musician. But at 29, I started a music distribution company. And so for 10 years, then I was focused on making that a great company. And then around the age of 38, I sold the company. And ever since then, for the last 17 years, I've been on a very different path. It's much more of an explorer. And you saw in my Useful Not True book, my definition of the difference between a leader and an explorer. That an explorer, kind of like the classic cliche of the British or Portuguese guy in a pith helmet with a machete in the jungles, braving into lands that have never been explored before, perhaps on a boat or in a kayak or with a small group of people going through uncharted lands. That's an explorer. But then when the explorer finds a good harbor and sends a message back to the Queen to say, we found a good harbor here in this place, then the queen sends a leader, not an explorer, a leader with a narrow focus to bring her citizens to this new harbor. And the leader is extremely narrow focused. He says, this is where we're going. We're going to that harbor. This is why it's going to be great. This is why you should come with me. Follow me. I'm going to take you to a better land, to this new harbor. That's a really good leader that goes in a straight line with an unwavering path. But that's a very different thing than being an explorer. So I'm currently living the life of an explorer.
You would think that it would go explorer, then leader, like the age of exploration, whereas you started off in your leader role, and now you're in an explorer phase again.
I guess you could picture it, if you want to keep using that metaphor. It makes sense that at the age of 14, I saw this destination that I wanted. I want to be a great musician. And I was narrow-minded and focused on that single goal for 15 years. And I think I achieved it by my own measure. Enough. It would have been nicer to be more successful. But I reached enough to where I was happy. And that's when I accidentally stumbled into creating this company. And then I saw this next vision of like, ooh, this could be a really great service for musicians. Not as commercial as possible, but just as helpful as possible. And that was my singular vision for 10 years. And then I achieved that. And then it just feels like, well, twice I've set out for some single goal and done it. Now let me just lift my head up and see what else is out there in the world.
You did mention that you hit those goals. I asked you what the cues were because I think a lot of folks, they initially have a goal, and then once they get some success, they like doing the things that they're good at, and it becomes, okay, let's go public. Okay, let's do this, let's do that. And the goal keeps shifting. For a lot of folks, to put something down and to take a new path is pretty scary. And did that ever come up for you?
Of course. But one of my core compasses in life is whatever scares you, go do it. That's been guiding me since I was a teenager on micro and macro levels. The micro level is, oh my God, I'm scared to talk to this person that I'm next to. Oh, I'm noticing that I'm scared. Therefore, whatever scares you, go do it. Here we go. I'm going to talk to this person now. On a macro level, wow, I'm a musician and I'm just a musician. I've only ever been just a musician. That's all I know. What would life be as if I stopped making music? Whoa, that's terrifying. So let's do it. That's a real core value of mine, which sits on top of an underlying value of wanting to live the fullest life I can before I die. I want to explore life from different points of view and embody different approaches to life. I really want to try being religious. I want to try being a hedonist. I want to try focusing on money. I want to try doing nothing. I want to live in nature. I want to live in the city. I want to chase the future. I want to live in the past. I want to try to live all of these different approaches to life. And to do that, you have to notice in yourself what your bias is, what your tendencies are, and then try to go against them in order to do what doesn't come naturally to you, in order to expand.
First of all, I want to thank you for something, because when I heard you talk about this topic on, I think it was Tim Ferriss's show, where you were talking about doing things that scared you and that you wanted to live a full life. I heard that in the gym, and I went straight from the gym to the dance studio and signed up for a 7-month membership.
Whoa! Mission accomplished.
And it's one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. Aww. It's so funny that these identity things, where you have these identities of, I'm not a dancing kind of guy. Well, 2 lessons in, I'm a dancer. Not a good dancer, but I'm a dancer. So thank you for that. But I do want to ask you, in your book, you talked about so many of us, we have our natural biases, our natural tendencies. Maybe you're just an anomaly in the sense that you are able to be so much more aware of your biases and tendencies than the rest of us. But how do you think we can kind of adjust for our poor habits, let's say?
I don't think I'm more aware than other people. I think I'm maybe just more driven to do something about it. I think most people will tell you, this is who I am, this is what I like, this is where I live, this is what I like to do, this is my favorite kind of music. And to me, when I hear myself saying or thinking those things, I think, well, if that's my favorite kind of music, I need to stop listening to that music and find the music that I currently hate and try to learn to love it. I need to try to appreciate the foods I currently dislike. I need to go get to know the place that currently repulses me. This is my challenge to myself, to understand the world from different points of view, is to notice my repulsion and steer into it and go there to get to know it. Please understand, I'm not saying everyone should be like this. This is my mission, to understand all the different points of view that I can. For somebody else, they might want to just dive deep into one. And let me pick on an easy stereotype, is the devout religious Muslim. I so admire that lifestyle. When I went to United Arab Emirates for my first time, I was so enamored because I so admire this different approach to life that is so devout, so non-questioning. Islam means surrender. It is giving up. It's saying that the recipe for the best life has already been dictated, and it is Muhammad's life. This is the ideal life. No further questions. I'm oversimplifying. But in short, it's just a surrender to saying, this is it. This is the answer. This is the way. And that is so beautiful and can create such social harmony when an entire culture aligns themselves to one way. It's incredible. I admire that as much as I enjoy my own approach. You just have to notice what inspires you, what interests you, what you keep thinking about, what idea in your head won't go away. Whether that's you really want to be a digital nomad, or you really want to have 6 kids and a big family and 3 dogs and a farm in Montana. Whatever idea you just can't get out of your head, you just kind of need to admit to yourself that this seems to be fascinating me and I need to go into this.
Yeah, on a big picture note, it just keeps bringing me back to self-awareness is everyone's life's work, because in order to pick the right path, we need to peel the onion right to the core to find out, what is it that I actually want to get out of this? Is it financial security? Is it peace of mind? Is it whatever it may be? For example, I admire the way that you live, but I imagine there's a price, right? In terms of all this critical thinking, all this uncertainty, all this murky kind of path where living like that, it must not be easy. And, I live in Portugal, and this is one of the most risk-averse cultures and conformist cultures that we have in the first world. And it's easy to make fun of it, that, everybody follows the same life path, do the same job, married at 24, buy a house at this age or whatever. But if peace of mind is your thing, then lean into that and be honest about that. But the problem is just doing it without any kind of questioning or critical thinking.
Yeah. So Steve, now we come to your video essay you did about There Is No Spoon, the Matrix and Sprinter video, which was so good. And honestly, it's the main reason I'm here.
Thank you.
Reached out. But the whole idea was we all have these limitations that are just a story, that are, I'm not a dancer, or I just want a quiet life. But that might just be a story that you told yourself years ago that might not be the only possibility for you. So again, I don't want to disturb anybody's peaceful path, but it can be worth challenging yourself to expand your self-identity a bit. So if you say, I'm Portuguese, so this is how it is. Or let's say, I'm Brazilian. We're loud. We're big. It's not my fault. I'm Brazilian. What do you expect? It's like, that's not the only way you can be. You might be using that as an excuse that is limiting you from being other ways. I used to have on the front page of my website, hi, I'm Derek. This is me. I was an entrepreneur. I'm an introvert. And a guy from Germany emailed me saying, you shouldn't limit yourself like that. You are more than just an introvert. You should rethink that. It's about all he said. And just prompted by that email, I gave it a minute and I went, I'm not only an introvert. There are times in my life where I turn on the extroverted skills, and there are times when I am more nuanced. It's a tool. This is not my only way of being. I'm not limited to just being an introvert. I was really glad that he challenged me. And by the way, to be clear, this is at the age of 50. It was at the age of 50 that I thought, maybe I'm not just an introvert. This is an ongoing process to peel back the layers of restrictive clothing that you might have been swaddled in since birth.
So a little bit of context for the listeners who haven't seen that one.
Everybody should see that video. Everybody listening, if you watch Steve's or listen to Steve's podcast, you need to see that video. It's a great, great video. Everyone should watch it.
Thank you. It's one of those funny things where we have certain works that we find are our masterpieces and nobody watched it. And then there are certain pieces of work that just get 100 times the views or the kind of exposure than the other one. And the only thing that matters is our own opinion, right?
Yeah.
A little bit of background on that is I use Neo's journey in the Matrix as well as this Chinese sprinter called Su Bingtian and his journey where he continuously just could not break the 10-second barrier. And he was frustrated. And he had all the disadvantages where he was 5'7" and Usain Bolt is 6'4". And Asians have short legs and long torsos, whereas West Africans have long legs and short torsos, perfect for running. And he just didn't let the I'm Asian, I'm Chinese, and therefore I can't do this limit his actions. And I think this is a nice little pivot towards your book, Useful Not True, where there are physical realities where I'm not going to do things that Shaquille O'Neal can do because I'm 5'9" and he's 7'1". But that doesn't mean that there isn't, let's say, an extra 10, 20, 30% of potential that is untapped within me that if I let the limiting beliefs just limit me as I'm not a dancer or Derek is an introvert, then we'll never take the actions to actually realize that untapped potential. So a limiting belief is a not useful, not true. And I'll leave the floor to Derek to explain what useful, not true, the concept is about.
It is about limiting beliefs. The core is that I found that I was following beliefs, or I would hold beliefs and follow their implications because I found them useful to me. A classic one is if you get invited to an event with a bunch of strangers, you can walk into the room and think everybody hates me. You can walk into the room and think, I don't belong here. Or you can walk into the room and think, everybody here is just waiting for someone else to break the ice. So I guess it's going to be me. And none of those beliefs is necessarily true, but one of those beliefs will lead to the actions you want. Maybe the action you want is to leave. And if the action you want is to leave, then the best belief to create that action is, everyone here hates me, this is a waste of my time. Okay, that belief helped you take the action to leave. But if the action you want is to make the most of this and meet people and enjoy yourself and make a new friend, then the correct belief, or the most useful belief to hold, is everyone here is a potential friend, just waiting for me to initiate the conversation. You realize as you get out of your hometown and you get away from your initial beliefs that were passed down to you from your parents, that there are infinite ways of looking at things, and no belief is true. If it was absolutely, positively, objectively true, it wouldn't be called a belief. It would be called a fact. A belief is something that we define as something held in our head. That's a way of looking at it. I believe that people should such and such. It doesn't mean that that's an absolute fact. It's a belief. So I noticed the distinction between the beliefs I was holding and absolute fact. And people would point out saying, hey, Derek, these beliefs you're talking about, business or adventuring, that's not true. And I'd say, I never said it was true. I said that I choose to believe this because I like the actions that it leads to. And I decided to write a whole book about that, which ended up being a huge exploration for me because I knew nothing about religion. I knew nothing about pragmatism, skepticism, nihilism. So I went and learned for years about all of these well-explored ideas before me and made this cute little book that's very catchy. Only 90 pages, called Useful Not True, and I'm really proud of it.
Well, first of all, the book is fantastic. And what I found was just incredibly useful from this book is the idea that beliefs are tools. What is the most useful tool for me right now? I was at a book club the other day, and the subject was Sam Harris's book on free will. This idea that we have no free will, which scientifically, I think Sam might be right. But everyone was so upset because, I don't want to be told that I have no free will or no agency. And the way I saw it is you can be flexible and contradictory about it, right? Where when I think of my parents and how they weren't perfect parents, they hurt me in many ways. And what is the point of me holding on to all this anger when I can just say, you know what? They are a product of their genes. They are a product of the culture they grew up in. They are a product of their circumstances. And they didn't choose to be this way. So in this moment, I used there is no free will to help me forgive my parents.
Ah, brilliant. I love that.
But then in other parts of my life, I like to believe that I have free will. And the reason that I wanted to chat with you was just that you have a certain intellectual flexibility that is hard to find in a public figure nowadays because everyone is so scared to flip-flop in terms of, I've said this once on a podcast and I'm never going to go back on it again, as if intellectual flexibility is some kind of bad word.
If I stop flip-flopping, that means I'm a dead fish.
Right? Yeah. So when China opened up its economy in the 80s and switched to a sort of pseudo-capitalist open market, the communist hardliners were really upset with President Deng Xiaoping, where they said, this is not ideologically pure. This is not Marxism. This is not socialism. And the president said to them, look, guys, it doesn't matter if it's a black cat or a white cat. If it can catch mice, it's a good cat. As in, my people are starving. So whatever, if it's communism or capitalism, as long as I can feed bellies, that's the point. So a little bit of stepping back in terms of beliefs are tools, that was such a powerful thing from your book.
Well, in your video, the Matrix Neo Sprinter video, you talked about the importance of stories and realizing what in our limiting beliefs are just stories. So think of how many people you've met that have said like, yeah, I just don't have confidence because I had a hard childhood. My parents always told me I was no good. And so that's why I can't start my own company. That's why I can't just get a plane ticket and go to a new place like you because you don't understand what it's like. I had a bad childhood. You think, wow, that's a really good story. How's that working out for you? Is that story getting you the results you want? Maybe. Maybe the result you want is to not have to try and to just resign yourself to just be a blob and to just sit where you are for the rest of your life and stop doing anything. And if that's what you want, then telling yourself a story about how your childhood was exceptionally hard, making you not like all those other people. No, no, no. Everyone else had great childhoods, but you have a hard childhood, and that's why you're going to sit here and do nothing. Well, then that's a useful story to get you that result. But I love your focus on stripping away the stories. And you used the metaphor of Neo in that initial kung fu training room where Morpheus is saying, like, really, do you think my muscles are what's making me stronger in this simulated training room? Like, come on, no, this is your ideas. This is all just up to you. So there are some people listening to this that don't want to hear this, and they will ignore it, and they will go right back to complaining and blaming. And there are some people like me when I was 14 that need to hear this and use it as the key to unlock more potential.
You touched on a really important point just now, which is if that is all you actually want, let's say you're complaining and you create a sob story, if this is the actual life that you do want, that's okay. Like one perfect example for this is a lot of the incel red pill stuff that I see, where they have all these stories about women being horrible and the dating market being completely impossible. Now, it is difficult for a lot of men. I don't want to deny that, but being impossible. I think there's a lot of, okay, this justifies my position. This justifies my inaction. And this would be okay if you knew deep down that you didn't want a partner. But there's a reason that a lot of these guys with these kind of ideologies, the moment that they lose their virginity, the moment that they get a girlfriend, they flip-flop on that ideology right away. So if you're spouting this and you secretly want a woman, that's being dishonest with yourself, and you're not getting to where you want to be. If you actually are okay with just complaining for the rest of your life, then do that. But I think it's important to ask ourselves, what do we actually want out of our life? And is this useful?
Yeah. A lot of people are not like me and you. They did not get on a plane to move somewhere far away. They just are like trying to get through their day, trying to just make it to the end of this week, trying to just make it to the end of the month. That's all I can handle. Obviously, those people are probably not tuned into your podcast, but that's a way of living that is helped by believing stories that say, I can't, and it's impossible. And here's another one that's in the zeitgeist, is making enemies out of other cultures. To say, well, those people are crazy, and those people are just evil, and those people are just greedy, and those people are insane. And therefore, my culture that I grew up with, the way it was 30 years ago, that's the right one. This is the way life needs to be, is the way that it was when I grew up right here 30 years ago. That is the correct way, and everything else is wrong. That's a really useful belief and a useful story if you just want to stay put and feel smug and feel good about your life choices.
When I read your book, the feeling that I got was Derek wrote this, I don't even want to put a category on it, a philosophy, whatever you want to categorize the book. And in fact, it actually became very much an emotional intelligence book for me of just understanding why people believe certain things. A great example is thinking about why people support certain wars, for example. People will say, oh, how can those people support that war? And to me, it's no surprise at all, because if you are of a certain ethnicity or from a certain country, and your entire identity is wrapped around being someone from that country, if that country does evil things, then you don't know this consciously, but you start to feel that I'm evil. So supporting that war is very much just supporting your own identity in many ways. But knowing our underlying emotional motivations is very difficult.
Yeah, it's the reason I travel is I want to inhabit philosophies. I want to be Jewish and be Muslim and be Hindu and be Brazilian and be Japanese and be Finnish and be Chinese. I want all of these. I want to embody and experience life through all these different worldviews so that none of them are they. It's all we.
I find that once you travel enough and live in enough different places and truly interact with people and are open to listening to their perspectives, it's pretty much impossible to get mad at things. Where you really just get to a point where it's, I may not condone what you do, but I understand why you do what you do.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't want to get there. They like the outrage because the outrage gives them that smug, I am right and the rest of you are wrong. This is effortless. It's already solved. I'm right and all of you are wrong. I'm smart and all of you are stupid. That's a very pleasurable worldview to hold.
Yeah.
It is much more mellow to understand the Israeli point of view and the Palestinian point of view. It takes more work, but man, it makes your head a more interesting place to live.
Hey guys, we had to cut the interview short because of a technical difficulty. That was totally my fault. But the good news is, Derek was kind enough to agree to come back for a part 2 sometime soon. So as usual, if you got some value out of today's episode, please pay it forward by sharing it with someone else that you think it can help. My name is Steve. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.